Hi everyone. It's good to be back again. Welcome to another episode of Building Mother Disaster from Scratch, where we developing end-to-end MDS pipeline from scratch using core open source technologies. Most of the uh, technology we are using here are open source, even though some of those technology has their cloud version, which is paid. So, in the last episode, we talked about good expectations for data validation. And I mentioned we are going to move on to the Airflow side of things, and putting everything together in an orchestration tool like Airflow. So let's just get into it. So as you might have known before now, this is the main Apache of Airflow website. So Airflow is an open source platform for developing the scheduling and monitoring batch-oriented workflows. In quotes, batch-oriented workflows. Airflow is typically not a tool developed for managing streaming pipeline, right? Airflow extensible Python framework enables you to build workflows connecting with, virtually any kind of technology, and it has a web-based UI that you can interact with, which helps you to visualize and manage and also debug your workflows. You can run Airflow with a variety of configurations. It can def- uh, definitely configurable, like you can configure it to your taste from a single process on your laptop to a distributed system capable of handling very large workloads. So, and I'll just quickly also delve into some core concepts of Airflow. uh what we call, probably you'll have been familiar with the word Dag when talking about Airflow. So Dag typically is a pipeline in Airflow that puts everything together. Is Dag simply means directed acyclic graph. Directed acyclic graph, meaning that everything has to connect. Uh, every end of your pipeline has to connect, and the word acyclic means that it cannot be a cyclic graph. Acyclic means not cyclic. That is, the connection must not form like a circle. So if you are moving from point A to point B and you are moving from point B to point C, C should not come back to A again, because if C should come back to A, that forms like a cycle. So in any of the pipeline that you're building, it should not form some sort of circle, your connections. Just as I mentioned, if A, if I'm going from point A to point B, that is, I want task A to run. After task A, task B should run. Then probably after task B, task C should run. Then you cannot say after task C, task A should come back and to come back run again. So that will form like a cycle, because it will go back to A to B to C, then go back to A that way. So you cannot have like a cyclic graph. It's going to blow up. Everyone is going to complain about that. So you should take note of that. Uh, we have the concept of tax, which is a single operation. Tax is more like, it's like you are trying to perform like a single operation. Let's say a transform or something, or an extract. You can even have a tag that does both uh, extract and transform and even load. But ideally, a task is designed to perform just a single operation, right? So my task can be, maybe you have three tasks. I just mentioned ABC: task A, task B, task C. Maybe task A is to extract, task B is to uh transform, and task C is to load, like something like that. Now we have the concept of operators. Let me just share something with you so that we can. Okay, I'll share that. So I have the concept of operators, which are pre-built task types in Airflow. So Airflow has a lot of operators that you can work with when developing your task. So we have Python operator, bash operator, empty operator, dummy operator, a lot of kind of operators that you're going to work with depending on what you're trying to build. And you have what we call scheduler. Scheduler is the airflow, uh, a part of your airflow that helps with running your job at the particular time that you defined it. Then you have the web UI, which is the airflow UI that you can log into and to track things like visually and see everything, how it connects together, so where you can monitor and manage your jobs. Right. So let me share my VS Code, then I'll come back to go to the Airflow UI probably and show us a few things there. Yeah, this is like a sample DAG. This is a DAG for Airbyte, and so I define some arguments. I've already import some libraries here. So these are one of the operators I'm talking about. See, airflow operators.bash, airflow.operators.empty. This is a bash operator. This is an empty operator. This is one operator, airbyte trigger sync operator. So these are different kind of operators that help in define when you are defining your task. So in here, I wrote some functions. Then this is where I start to define my DAG, right? So in here, I'm using a DAG function here, and then from there, I'm defining my task. That this is my task. This is one task. This is another task, and lastly, the third task. So you have three tasks that forms my DAG, right? And you can see this is where I'm connecting my DAG using this like this arrow. So this 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 task run. Then after this task is finished, this task is going to run. Then the last one is going to run like that, right? All right. So having said that, let's quickly go to the Airflow UI. Let me share the Airflow UI with you very quickly. So I already started my Docker and I started my Airflow instance, and this is what it looks like. So when you log into Airflow, this is what it looks like. You can see the list of tags. Because I turned on example tags in my Docker Composer YAML file, that's why I have a lot of tags in here. So the tags that I've actually created, they are not really this much. So these are all the tags that you have here, right? So let me click a sample tag and let's see how it's going to look like. This one tag here. This is the Airbyte Airflow job that I just mentioned. So this is, you have grid mode, you have graph mode to explore your tag. I just like to see it in the graph mode. So I click on graph, you see how everything connects. So the Airbyte trigger sync task followed by this, then followed by this. So we have different color for your task when it is running. It's like when it is showing green, that it's succeeded already. You can even see everything here highlighted here. So these are the kind of color modes for the mode that your task is in at the point in time. This one is if it's supposed to fire, this one is if it's failed, if it's in queue, if it's removed, restarting, etc. etc. Right. So you can go in there and also take a look at all of these things and probably read more about it. So I'm just gonna start here. And let's go to the next agenda of the day, which is actually defining our DAGs for the steps that we've created in previous episodes. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about the DAGs created for Airbyte for uh, DBT project, then for Great Expectation Validation project. So now for the Airbyte, so before now you would have created like a job that loads your data from, I think, Postgres to your Snowflake warehouse, right? So now you want to then define a want to now define a task or a tag that will help us trigger our job on Airbyte. When we created our Airbyte job, we put it in manual and not on schedule. You can actually run your job on schedule from Airbyte, but because we want to have it controlled from Airflow, we put it on manual. So we want to trigger the Airbyte job manually from our Airflow instance. So now I have a couple of configuration here, of which uh you have to do a couple of things before you can have this set up, like on success email and failure email. So I have this set up because I want uh I want my job to I want my the Airflow job to send me a success or a failure email if my job fails or it's succeeded. So that is what these ones are doing here. First of all, I imported the libraries I needed and define Airbyte connection ID. This Airbyte connection ID is important because it is needed for Airflow to identify what job it needs to trigger on the Airbyte side of things. So I'll show you this real quick. I'll show you this real quick when I'm going into to the Airflow or Airbyte environment. So define some default argument, the owner, the start date, etc., etc. I want it to email on failure, also email on success. And that is also why I'm defining my email when it is succeeded and when it fails. So here define my dark context, puts a dark ID which is used to uniquely identify my pipeline, which is the Airbyte. I want it to run daily, right? So now I I define my first tag. The first tag here is to trigger the Airbyte job. So I give it a task ID which is unique for each task. Then this Airbyte connection ID I'm going to show you real quick. It is important. I have to create this one at the back end of Airflow on the Airflow UI. So I'm not just passing this name. This name is something that I've already created on Airflow UI. It's not just a random name, right? Then this Airbyte connection ID is what I've defined up there, right? This place here, right? So I'm going to show you this connection, how I set it up. Then on success callback, on failure callback, so if it fails and stuff like that, this asynchronous to be true because I really don't want it to be uh tracking whatever is going on there. Just trigger the job. This is going to be the one to like check. I'll use this one to check what is going on the Airbyte job that has been triggered if it failed or passed. So this is going to wait for this Airbyte sync to complete. That is the job, that's the extract and load job on Airbyte to complete. And this one here is just to check the output. That is, did it fail or did it pass or something like that. It is going to check that and it's going to email whether it succeeded or passed. Then if it passed, and this one is just an empty operator that's just going to run, right? So then the task is going to follow in that order that I've already defined it. So the sync task, which is going to trigger the job, and this is going to wait for the sync to be completed before this one actually runs. So let me quickly go to Airflow and show you how I created this Airbyte connection, which is important for the job. And lastly, to show you how I got this Airbyte connection ID. This connection ID. This is different from this Airbyte con here. Please take note. So now let me go here. Let me show you my airflow slash Airbyte UI so that you can see. All right, now let me show you how I created the Airbyte connection ID. So you have to go to admin, go to connections. So this is the Airbyte con. I already created it, but I'm going to show you how I did something like this again. So this is Airbyte con that I mentioned in the task. So go to admin, go to connections, then go to admin connection. So you're already in connection. Add a new record. See this plus sign, you're going to click on it and put a connection name. That is the connection ID. That is what you're going to be referencing in the airflow. So put the connection ID here. I use Airbyte con in my case. Then the connection type is going to be Airbyte. I'm going to select Airbyte. Then the host, because it is Docker that is hosting the Airbyte. Put host dot docker dot internal. Then for the schema, I don't need schema. Login. The credentials that are used to log into your Airbyte UI, your Airbyte web server, you put it, and that's the user and the password. Put it there. Then put port 8001. That's the port that Airbyte exposes for API calls. So you put 8001. Then you save it. When you save it, that is what you see on Airbyte admin connections. So the connection ID, you copy it. That's what you put in that position. So how did I get the actual connection ID that Airflow is going to know that this is the job I'm supposed to trigger on Airbyte? So when you log into Airbyte UI, you go to connections. Yeah, you go to connections. Then this is the connection. This is what is this is the job that is picking data from my Postgres and sending it to my Snowflake warehouse. So if I click on it, if you look at this URL here, this URL, you see localhost 8000 workspaces, blah 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 blah. Then you see connections, right? Then this number after this connection, this number here, then up to before this slash status, that is your connection ID. That is what you're going to copy as your Airbyte connection ID. And that's what we are going to put inside your Airflow Dag. All right. So we've mentioned the configuration for our Airflow, our Airbyte Dag now. Okay, let's go back and talk about the dbt Dag. Okay, so let's see. So this is our Airbyte Dag. So let's go to dbt Dag. So this is our dbt Dag. Yeah, most importantly, we are using this dbt task group. You can customize your own a different way, right? So, and then some other uh module that I'm using. I don't need this one. I'm not actually using it, but I'm going to actually use it, or you're going to actually use it one way or the other if you want to put everything together in one place, right? I'll go to touch that a little bit. So you know, define this dbt vars. This is what is going to accept the vars flag in your dbt run, because we needed these are inside our dbt configuration. These variables std schema, when we are defining when we're creating a generate schema schema macro, something like that. Yeah, we have this in our dbt project YAML for all these variables. We need to pass it. So we define the dag context, then within it, we're creating a dbt task group, and these are the parameters that takes your group ID, then your project config function. You pass these parameters. Your project path, where your project is residing, you have to put it. Mine is under dbt slash Java shop. Now you know that this mapping that I'm putting here, it's already a default mapping that I've already mapped out in my Docker Compose or YAML file. So this is what is mapping. This is a directory in my Docker volume, my Docker, and that is what is mapping to my local environment, local machine on my laptop. So this part corresponds to this place here, corresponds to /dbt /this Jaffa shop, because this is where my dbt project is, and that is where my dbt project is sitting, right? So then dbt vars is accepting this dbt vars variable because I need this variable. Then my profile config, my profile name is Jaffa shop. Now for you to get your profile name, typically that will be within your project.yaml file. In your dbt project.yaml file, this is your profile name. Let me show you this. This is your profile name, more like your project name, Jaffa shop, right? And you can say profile the YAML file is corresponds to this Jaffa shop. So now let me go back to the Dag. Let me go back to the Dag. Yeah, target name. I want it to be in prod. Then profile the YAML file part. I don't. This might be necessary. I don't know if it's, but just put it. That is where your profile the YAML file is sitting, just past the directory, so which is sitting in my project, that is dbt Jaffa shop. This is my profile YAML file sitting in that location, and my execution configuration, that is this one, it's typically defined within my Docker file. I define this context there, right? This is what it should look like if you are following my own configuration, my setup. So if I go to my my Docker file, this is let me see. Okay, I think I let me see. Okay, I think I have it. Created. It's automatically gets created and detected that way. So let me go back to the Dag. So just use this setup as a executable path. This is more like when your dbt is being set up, this is going to be the ideal location in your dbt context. So if I log in, I don't want to spend more time talking about this. So let's see into my scheduler container, docker ps. Oh, what? Okay, I'm already in the container. This is let me to ls. I'm already in the container. ls slash home slash airflow slash, wasn't showing anything, slash dot local slash bin. Then you see all this. I'm using the dbt library, so that this is where your dbt, this is my dbt context. So then the actual task to run. So this is a task group because I'm not I'm not actually specify a single task at a time. They are a group because it's a DPT project, and DPT project has models, task tests, and the likes. So everything it's uh it's properly identifies your what is going on in your project and puts everything together for you, and it's kind of uh explodes the the connections and create like a directed acyclic graph for you. So having said that, let's quickly check it out on the Airflow UI. So now uh let me go to the Airflow UI. So on the Airflow UI, go to Dags, then you see run DPT project. The Dag ID is run DPT, run MDS DPT Java. This is it. So yeah, yeah. Let me show you the graph. So this is what it looks like. It already explodes. This is the group. If I minimize it, this is what the tags. But if I expand it, this is what it looks like typically. So these are the staging model. I have 6 of them. Then followed by the intermediate model, followed by the maths. Now under the maths, you now have test. If I expand this, you now have the run, the run itself, running the models and testing it. Also for the facts, running it and test, and the test that goes in beneath, and like so the same thing go for dim customers, dim stores, right? I think it's still okay. Yeah, 1 2 3 4 dim product here. So like that. So having said that, that's on the DBT side of things. So last, let's go into uh the validation part, which is the great expectation. So we talked about in our previous episode configuring our expectations. So yeah, this way you put it everything in the DAG. So let me share my VS Code again. So this is the DAG for our great expectation here. So import the necessary libraries, especially the great expectation provider, great expectation operator. So one of the key things I need is my great expectation data context, where it is. This is where my project is sitting, right? And it identifies the operator is able to identify my context, my source, and everything. So you find my data and my data context, and then using the great expectation operator, I'll pass my task ID, which uniquely identify the task. Now, because I'm going to I put everything in a checkpoint, so I put a checkpoint name. We created 2 checkpoints in previous episode. The fact others checkpoint, I put it there. Then data context root directory, which is what I specified here. That is where my great expectation project is sitting. How to pass it so that you can know how to find my context, my checkpoint name, and it will uniquely identify data source and everything together. So then my dim product checkpoint, create another task for it, put the same parameter. Then I'm running the checkpoint. So we now run the checkpoint. I see that I'm putting them the two of them in 2 separate lines because I want them to run individually. This one does not have to run after one another or something because they are not dependent on each other. So that's the way I defined it here. So let's see how it looks like in the Airflow UI. So let me show you that real quick. So Dags, I think I have it as run MDS validate something. Uh on MDS validate Java format. If you click on graph, you see the two of them are sitting independently like this. So the two of them can run at the same time. All right. So having talked about that, let's quickly trigger all of them one after the other, then we round up. So go to Dags. Let me trigger the Airbyte job. So I trigger the Airbyte job now. Let me clear this tax so that this one will run. I'll just clear the tax, so I'll use this tax. So it will start running now. It will start from this first one, which is Airbyte trigger sync. So this first one is in queue and it's about to run. So it's running now. So as it is running now, it means that my Airbyte job should have been triggered. So if I go to Airbyte, this is my Airbyte UI. This job should start to be syncing. It should start to be syncing now. Let me refresh the page. So you can see is in queue. Is running already, right? But they will start running. They are still in queue. Is starting the job. Everybody is starting the job. So because I've triggered it from Airflow, which, so you can see it has checked as green. It means that the job is successfully triggered. So this should start running anytime soon. So the second job here, so the second task here, which is Airbyte check sync, is supposed to check when this job is successful. So when this job is successful, then it will check as green that okay, I've confirmed that the job that was being triggered is successful. So one of the uh the data stream in the Airbyte job is already running. So you can also see some of the logs to track what is going on. This one is saying 8,658 extracted, blah 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 blah. I don't know why it's slow. Now the sync is complete on Airbyte side of things. Airflow should pick it up anytime soon that the sync is completed and it's going to pass all the steps. So we come back to check this. It should check as green and everything should mark. So yeah, you can see everything is checked as green. It's passed. So now let's go to the DBT tags, the DBT Dag, which is the next thing. I'm going to show you something real quick before we put this on a wrap. One MDS DBT Jaffu. So this is going to run our DBT job. Puts everything together. So I'm going to trigger the job again. So I've triggered a new run. Let me refresh. It's going to start anytime soon. Let me see. All right, so it has started. So this, you can see that we have two jobs running at a time. It's only two jobs that can run in parallel because of the settings in our profiles.yaml file, which we put threads is equals to 2. So two threads can only run in parallel. So it's only when those two independent Dags are completed, then we can, and another two independent Dags, two independent tasks can then run. So this should also get completed. So we'll come back to check at this. So let me go and trigger. Ideally, you should run your Great Expectation Dag after the DBT job is completed. That should be the ideal way, but I don't want to wait for this to complete because of time. So go to Dag. Let me go to the Great Expectation job. You can run that quickly. This is one MDS validates char format. So it's just going to run those two checkpoints. So I'm going to trigger the job now. So this job has gotten triggered, and it should validate those. It should validate those two tables with the expectation that you already have defined. Okay, this is completed. So let me look at the in product validation. So I will click on the task. Let me go to the logs. Let's check the expectations result. If it didn't pass, it should have failed. So marked it as failed. So you can see evaluated expectations 3, successful expectations 3, unsuccessful expectations 0. And you can see each of the expectation type, expect column minimum to be between units where straight minimum is 0 and it passed it. So it means that we don't have anything that is 0 or below 0. Another one is expect column values to not be null. That's the product key. You don't set it to be null. Unexpected count is 0. Element count 10. Another one is expect column values to be unique, which is the product key. Element count 0. Unexpected count 0. It's marked it as successful. So that's on those three ends. So let me quickly check the DBT job. Okay, now you can see that our DBT job is completed. All the models has been successfully loaded into the data warehouse. Our dates, dimension, our Jaffa customers, Jaffa items, the staging area, the intermediate area, and the fact tables and dimension tables. All right, so I think one thing I forgot to mention that I created a date dimension. So definitely I will have these changes committed into GitHub, so you can see the changes that was made and you can implement it on your own end. So that's on that side, but probably I'll just give like a little brief into what was done so that we can see that briefly. Okay, so in here you have I created a date.sql model, and this is materialized as view, and I'm using the dbt date package to I'm using the macro get date dimension from the dbt package to create like a date table. I'm supplying a start date and a end date. For the end date, for the start date, I'm using like a constant date, which is 2018 January 1st. But for the end date, I'm customizing it to be the current year, the last day of the current year. So at the time that this job is running, it uses 31st of December 2025. So by the time I move to next year, the dates will be updated that way. So I don't want to add code, that's why I use this. And I created this macro manually and is under the macros folder. You will see get current end of year macro. So which is using this inbuilt macro from dbt, which to extract the end of year. So when when the job actually started, it extracts the year and also replace the month by with 12 and the day by 31. You understand? So that's on that. So the way we've configured the dbt project, in our profiles the YAML file, we use the environment variables to ingest our credentials. So let me quickly go through that. So in profiles the YAML file, you have about 4 environment variables that we ingested using the envar macro, DBT macro, right? So unless you hard coded yours into your profiles.yaml file, then you should not worry about what I'm about to discuss. But then in the future you might want to do so. So I because we need to trigger our DBT project from Airflow, we need our environment variable to be available in our Docker container, because our Airflow is going to be running in a Docker container and we need our environment variable to be visible from there. So in here, I have my Docker. If you look at the terminal, I'm inside the Docker container environment. This is my scheduler, and if I do echo snowflake wh, you can see that this is the name of my warehouse. I have this as an environment variable already, and similarly you will have all of this. I will add up all of these environment variables. So if I check for snowflake user, is already there, so I don't need to export, right? I don't need to export my environment variables. So how did I do that? Right, did I ingested the environment variable within the Docker Compose YAML file. There some other ways you can get it done, right? So if you want to do it similarly, you can ingest it through Docker Compose YAML file. So let me quickly show you. In your Docker Compose YAML file for your Airflow, uh, Docker file within your Airflow. So inside this Docker Compose the YAML, so you can ingest. So I modified this one earlier. So ideally, you are going to have all of this configuration under environment if you are using the the Docker Compose YAML file from Airflow website. So what we need to do is that we have a couple of environment variables that we need to ingest, right? So we'll just define it within this environment section of our Docker Compose YAML file. So for instance, I want to define my snowflake warehouse. I will just you give it the same name that you have inside your dbt profiles.yaml file. So snowflake warehouse is snowflake. Then you put the value, which is like my own value is MDS warehouse. If your own value is different, put it there. You also specify the user, uh, the key of my environment variable is snowflake underscore user, and the value is MDS user. You put the password and the likes. So when you are building a Docker container, when you run Docker compose up dash build, these environment variables will be built within your Docker environment, so it will exist naturally there. So you don't have to manually enter the Docker container and export those variables, right? So that is how you should go about it. So now, having said that, so that would be all for this session. Right. Thank you for following through to this episode, and don't forget to share, to like, and to subscribe. Share with your colleague at work, share with your friends that will probably benefit from this series, right? So in our next episode, we're going to be talking about BI uh the BI section of this architecture, which we are going to be using preset cloud, which is a managed Apache superset platform for building dashboard for business intelligence. So we're going to cover the overview of presets, and probably we're going to have two separate episodes talking about the overview, environment, and then building the first dashboard, right? So I would like to see you guys there. Stay tuned, and see you guys next time. Bye for now.